Sedona. It is Saturday, July 6, 2024, and at 9 o'clock, it's time for Sedona Life with Stephen Hanks, Red Rock Country's radio magazine. I'm your host, the aforementioned Stephen Hanks, and a lot of people don't really like the word aforementioned, but I just threw it out there anyway. We broadcast this show every Saturday at this time on KAZM 106.5 FM and 780 AM Mellow Mountain Radio. And we also live stream this show at www.mellowmountainradio.com. I welcome all my listeners to a radio show that each week explores all the fascinating aspects of life and the intriguing personalities in Sedona and the Verde Valley. And by the way, our shows are also magically transformed into podcasts, which can be heard on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify pretty soon after we go off the air, maybe later on Saturday. Today's show and all of my shows during July are being sponsored by eMerge Online Marketing from right here in Sedona. For the past 14 years, eMerge Online Marketing has been providing social media marketing, management, training, and advertising services for numerous small to mid-sized businesses across 10 states. They can be your social media marketing department down the hall and keep an eye on your online reviews and your reputation as well. So, as you well know, this is the point in the show when we present Stephen's Sedona Scene, when I tell everyone in my listening audience about some terrific events happening over the following week in Sedona and the Verde Valley. But since I want to spend as much time as possible chatting with my special guest in the studio today, I'm going to tell you about just two events taking place in our area in the next couple of weeks. The first one is the Roving Wave Festival, a traveling festival suitable for all ages, conceived by Carpetbag Brigade Physical Theater, directed by Jay Ruby. This festival brings free live performance culture to 5 different cities and towns in Yavapai County. Now, these events feature international performers in the art of, get this, acrobatic stilt dancing. And they are from the UK, Colombia, Canada, and of course, the USA. The Carpetbag Brigade masters a unique theatrical language on stilts, a delicate overlap of theater, dance, and circus performing. Now, these performances will be on, get this down, July 12th in Jerome, July 13th in Cottonwood, July 14th in Sedona at the Posse Grounds, July 20th in Prescott Valley, and July 21 in Prescott. So bring your lawn chair to these towns to enjoy world-class free outdoor performances. For more information about the schedule, location, and events, go to carpetbagbrigade.weebly.com. Don't forget that Weebly in there. Carpetbagbrigade.weebly, WEEBLY.com. Now, if you're a fan of Shakespeare, it's that time of year again for the Flagstaff Shakespeare Festival, which is one of Flagstaff's most celebrated events. This summer, the festival is celebrating its 10th anniversary, and attendees can enjoy 2 of the Bard's classic plays. From July 10 to August 4, the Shakespeare Festival presents The Merry Wives of Windsor. And from July 11th to August 3rd, it's Julius Caesar. For more information, go to flagshakes.org. That's Flagshakes, FLAGSHAKES.org. My in-studio special guest this morning is Nikki Check, who is a candidate for the Democratic nomination for District 3 Yavapai County Supervisor against incumbent Donna Michaels, who in the 2020 election for this position defeated then-Republican incumbent Randy Garrison. By the way, I should point out that for those unfamiliar with all the areas of District 3, which I actually was, and I can say that because I've only been living here for like a little less than 3 years, it covers Bridgeport, Clarkdale, Cottonwood, Jerome, Perkinsville, Sedona, of course, Verde Santa Fe, Verde Village, and the village of Oak Creek. Nikki, did I leave anything out?
Sounds good to me.
I want to be factually correct on the areas. So, folks, with primary day in Arizona coming up on July 30th, you need to know a little bit about Nikki Check. She's a second-generation Arizonan who was born and raised in Yavapai County. She grew up in Prescott, spent her teenage years in Chino Valley, and moved to the Verde Valley in 2008, where she has spent the past 16 years. She currently resides in Jerome with her 9-year-old son, Ryan. In October 2011, Nikki was appointed to the Jerome Town Council, and the following spring began a 2.5-year term as mayor of Jerome. In 2016, Nikki made a run for the state Senate, nearly winning the Legislative District 6 seat. Nikki has also served on several nonprofit boards, including the former Verde River Basin Partnership, which is now Friends of the Verde River, the Verde Valley Wine Consortium, and we are going to talk about wine before the show is over, and the Verde Valley Forum for Public Affairs. I'm especially thrilled to have Nikki as my guest today because she happens to be celebrating a birthday. Nikki, welcome to Sedona Life with Steve and Hanks, and a very happy birthday to you.
Oh, it's really fun to be here. I appreciate you having me.
It's great to have you, and I will definitely avoid having myself and Ryan in the booth sing happy birthday before the show starts.
I know you have a great voice.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a little out of practice, but if we do a cabaret show at the Sedona International Film Festival next July 6th, I will sing happy birthday.
I will fully expect it then.
Okay, so all seriousness aside, so the first question I want to ask you, I think a lot of people need to have this knowledge because, district supervisor can be a little, a kind of job that's kind of amorphous and not really well known to people. So could you explain to our audience who may not be familiar with that job of the district supervisor, what the responsibilities are and why it's important to the community?
Absolutely. In fact, I'll just say most people don't know what is entailed in this
job.
So
that was a good question to start, right?
It's a great question. It's one I answer a lot. And I think there's something to that. It's not a simple job. It's a very complex array of duties that can be associated with the county supervisor. So it's actually not a very easy question to answer. So I think there's a couple of different important facets to it that are direct functions, but there's also some more nuanced ways to be a good supervisor. And so, first of all, there's a lot of county departments. I think the main county departments that come to mind are the sheriff's department, the health department, development services, and then there's, down to the smaller departments. But there's at least 27 different departments held within the county, and they all have administrations, they all have directors, and their business, is conducted pretty much on their own, except for when policy changes really need to happen. The supervisors can provide direction and really be a connection to constituents, so that not everything's, decided within the administration. They have to be connected to who policy impacts. The other thing is, I think is a super important component of supervisors is land use changes. In unincorporated Yavapai County, meaning outside of municipal boundaries, when people want to change the zoning of the land from residential to commercial or any other which way, it goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then final decisions are made by the Board of Supervisors, which really impact and shape, how our county develops. The third facet is a fiscal component. You have two budgets. There's a general budget, and then there's a special revenues budget that takes into all of the line items that you see on your property tax bill. The library mill levy, the flood control districts, all those special districts, and those funds are to be distributed equitably between the 5 districts, which means, you're not spending a certain amount per district per year. So sometimes special projects come up in flood control, and you as a supervisor, you want to be understanding what the priorities are within your communities so that when it comes time to advocate for them within those special revenues, what's going on and you can advocate for them really clearly in a budgetary sense. So that's an important component. Then there's a more nuanced side of it because, I have a lot of support from municipal leaders, and there's a question of how much does a county supervisor impact policy at a municipal level?
Yeah, that occurred to me right away. Yeah.
And, it's there's no direct way that a county supervisor is going to make policy necessarily for a municipality. It really is up to the mayor and council. But it's really important to have a strong working relationship with each municipality because the county acts as a connector. And especially when it comes to transportation, the building of roads, when you address problems regionally, that's when the county really comes into play because the county can be that facilitator, bring our municipal voices together so that we can act cohesively. And that really matters with things like the zoning ordinance across the board, transportation, roads, and water.
Yeah. I hate to use this word in this context, especially in the political climate that we're in nationally and in a lot of regions. But what kind of quote unquote power does a county supervisor have in the scheme of things? And I think my related question is, and I just realized this when I mentioned all the different towns that this district covers, you need to have relationships with all of those mayors. And that must be going to be a daunting task if you're elected, managing those relationships, being diplomatic with everybody, trying to be fair about how so can you answer that?
Well, yeah. Not just having a good relationship with mayors, but there's so many unincorporated areas that usually do have community associations, Verde Villages and Verde Santa Fe, and having relationships with those HOAs. The Village of Oak Creek is really important that way too.
Right, which is where I live.
Yeah. Well, and so. It is a fine line. I really am proud of the relationships that I have. But someone might be able to look at my list of endorsements and say, was she going to do the bidding of the Sedona City Council, or is she really in the pocket?
I actually had that conversation with a friend yesterday when I talked about, and I'm going to get into the endorsements later, but you're right.
Well, and so it's all about process. And that's why, the person that's in this seat is really important because each person operates according to different value systems and strategy. And my strategic approach with building relationships is never quid pro quo. I am never promising a mayor or a council person anything. What I promise to both my constituents and to other elected officials is that I will show up, be thoughtful, be there for the conversation, and really not rush through the process because it really things can get messy if you sort of try to speed through the public process, especially on big topics. So it's really important to slow down. And if you feel like you're not hearing from a specific constituency or a specific voice, I'll try to go out and search that out so that I can really balance perspectives while maintaining rapport with all of, the elected officials. And I think everybody who I have relationships with that way knows that I'm still a free agent and I have the right to have different opinions and directions on policies. And that's really, it's heartening to see that still exists within our communities while it's sort of falling apart at the larger scale in government.
Yeah. One of the things I enjoy about having these conversations is no matter how many questions I prepare, in the course of the conversation, the guest will mention something that triggers some other topic. And when you mentioned the thing about quid pro quo, that caught me for this reason. I think especially young politicians or first-time candidates for jobs, I think almost all of them go in with that idea that I'm going to be somebody who's independent. I'm not going to be beholden to my donors or my supporters, and I'm sure that that's right. But how do you find it hard already to stick to that goal when you're raising money, when you're talking to all kinds of constituents, you're trying to win an election, and maybe you can even now, But as you're in the job, and if you have to run for re-election, do you think that's going to be a struggle to maintain that that value system?
I mean, I wouldn't say it will be a struggle, but it will be work.
Right.
And it's work that I'm already used to doing, having been mayor in a small town where you know people, you have friendships with people. And when issues come up regarding your friends, you have to dig deep to find that integrity and really still rely on that public process and, the other council members to move forward in a way that we're not serving ourselves, we're not serving our friends, we're not serving those special interests, but really, the broader public good.
Right. So you decided to run against the Democratic incumbent in this primary. Now, Donna Michaels' campaign ran a flyer insert in the local papers this past week that I found, I think it was in Kudos or the Red Rock News, listing bullet points on the issues she's committed to. For example, and I'll just go through the list quick, protecting local decision-making and ensuring that the community's voice is heard, prioritizing health, safety, social services, and quality education, fighting to protect our open space and public lands, ensuring cost-effective infrastructure that aligns with our community plans and vision, and securing our water future. Those sound like solid policies, and frankly, I can't imagine you would differ with Donna on anything on that list. So, that said, why are you running for this office, and what triggered your desire to run at this particular time?
Yeah, well, you're correct. I don't disagree with any of those bullet points. They would be excellent for anybody running for office to hold.
They're almost kind of no-brainers in a way.
Well, yeah, and I often say that, when people ask me, why are you running? What's different about you than Donna Michaels?
Sure, you get that a lot.
And I have to admit that, oftentimes on issues, we don't differ. Mm-hmm. It's really an approach that I think that there are some contrasts there. But the reason why I'm running is because I was asked to consider this race. And when somebody asks me to consider something, I really do it at a deep level. Mm-hmm. And I found resonance with this direction in that, I think that I really am a person that can serve this district. I think I represent the district really well. In that, I was born and raised in Yavapai County. I do know broadly Yavapai County, not just our district, so that I really can advocate for what's good for the county as a whole, and also very specifically our district.
Well, also when people are coming to you and say, we like you to run against an incumbent, that's a sign that something may be off somewhere within a party, right? I mean...
Yes, and I think, okay, so the person who asked me to consider this was a Republican. And it's our treasurer, Chip Davis.
Right. Who's one of your big endorsers.
He is, know, and he sees me as a centrist, I think, not unlike him. But, like I mentioned, these endorsements don't mean that we align on all policy issues, but that, we have a certain amount of integrity and groundedness in the process. And so he asked me to consider it. And then some of the next conversations I had were with prominent Democrats here in Sedona. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the most compelling endorsements that I do have is from the Democrats of the Red Rocks. Right. Because in a partisan race, the party really has a huge impact. Mm-hmm. And any organization that's a direct arm of the Arizona Democratic Party is forbidden from endorsing. And DOOR is one of the few organizations that has the ability to do so, but they certainly don't have to. And they wouldn't if it weren't a compelling contrast.
Right. One thing that's come up a lot, and this was the first bullet point in Donna's list, And this kind of has jumped out at me, and I've heard you talk about it in your forums, and I've also heard it mentioned by one of the Republicans running for the city council, and also on radio shows locally who don't necessarily support the Democrats on the council or the mayor, and that is this notion that politicians that are currently in office don't listen to the constituents, aren't seeking out opinions, I kind of find that hard to believe in a small community like this. So tell me whether that's really a thing. I mean, and how you're going to handle that kind of thing with communicating with the residents.
Yeah. Here's the thing. It's an elected position and it's a big job.
Right.
County supervisor is a big job, but you don't have to clock in.
Right.
You can choose how much time you spend, and you can choose which phone calls you respond to, which meetings you set in your calendar. There's a lot of, choice that you have as an elected official in how much you show up.
Right.
And that was one of the criticisms that I heard from our incumbent, and not just once, and not just from a certain, sector or a certain municipality. There were many elected officials or, leaders of organizations or prominent community members who were having trouble setting a meeting with our current supervisor.
Getting access. Yeah. And,
and in addition to, I think she's got probably the worst record of attendance. She's missed not a huge amount of meetings, but enough meetings that it's significant. It's excused absences are certainly allowed as an elected official. She hasn't broken any rules, but overall, it is so important that as a representative of so many constituents, that you do your absolute best to show up to the highest degree possible, to take those phone calls. And I'm finally getting to the point where I'm having a hard time, responding to all of the calls that I have and the emails that I have.
Time management's going to be vital, and job, especially if you do get elected.
Yeah. So, you are only one person, but I think it really shows, how much you are showing up to serve your constituency with those. In fact, somebody told me a story of a San Diego County Commissioner, which was famous for returning every single phone call the same day he got it. And he would stay up until, the phone would ring at 11 p.m.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not a night person, but I certainly am going to do my best to not only be responsive, but be proactive about reaching out to people.
Yeah.
Make sure that I'm touching base with those community leaders, those HOA leaders, those municipal leaders, and making sure that I'm doing the work to reach out to understand what's important to them instead of them having to beat down my door.
Not to mention the fact that once you're in office, the first, I would say, 6 months to a year is a huge learning experience. Just once you're in the job, figuring out where the problems are, what the issues are, who wants to talk to you, prioritizing all that.
Yeah, and I think that's really a place where I can really contribute. As a supervisor, I have amazing relationships across the county. Having grown up in Prescott, I'm still, fairly well connected in that community. And I know that if I don't know the answer to something, I know somebody who does.
That's great.
and I have those phone numbers in my phone already. I can reach out, and I think I'm going to be hitting the ground running. I mean, I think you can tell that I'm not coming out strongly on certain issues or hot button things. I think that's really a part of, my approach, is that I'm going to be there to do the work, to hold the space for the proper process. But what maybe doesn't come across as easily is how many meetings I've had, how much work I've done to understand the issues. I mean, dozens and dozens of officials.
I've seen on social media you're appearing someplace sometimes a couple of times a week.
Well, and I certainly I don't post my personal meetings, the coffees, the lunches, that I'm having, to really get up to speed so that I can hit the ground running and go to work for people.
Great. So when I was scanning your campaign website to learn as much as I could about you, not only because I'm a voter, but to prepare for the show, one of the things that caught my eye is you say on your campaign website that, quote, currently our district contributes the most tax dollars to the county and our priorities have not been adequately represented in the budget. How do you feel that disparity has presented itself and affected Yavapai County residents?
Well, that's one reason why Sedona is really interested in this race, because Sedona and VOC are a big part of, the property tax pot,
Right.
because the home values are very high here. And so it really contributes a lot to Yavapai County. And yet, we're not so connected into the rest of the county that we have a strong voice.
Right.
And so I think it's possible. There's a voting block, issue, if you will. Only one supervisor represents this side of the mountain fully. District 2 is split between the east and west sides of the county. And so that's, one facet of the issue. I think people have really seen it applied to, a higher degree with Yavapai College. And that has a real focus for people. But essentially, that sentiment doesn't translate into an inflammatory conversation, I think. We're not getting our tax dollars back, not because the other supervisors want to keep them from us,
right,
or because the county departments are actively working against us. It's about, having that cohesive vision and distilling our priorities into things that can be easily communicated and easily advocated for. And it takes a lot of hours to distill that down.
Yeah. I definitely want to start getting into some specific issues in the campaign, but I need to give a shout out to my sponsor now. So I want to tell everybody about eMerge Online Marketing, which is owned by Dick Fisher and his wife Teresa, who are both members of the Sedona Referrals Club, who I mention often because I'm a member and they are members. And Dick and Teresa and eMerge Online Marketing offer a unique approach and a defined strategy to ensure your social media efforts align with your business goals. When it comes to managing your social media, eMerge Online Marketing has the time, the tools, and the talent to get the job done with your success top of mind. They also believe strongly in the power of online reviews. If you care about your online reviews and reputation, they have a proven system that helps your online ratings quickly improve across the most relevant review sites. So contact Dick Fisher at eMerge Online Marketing at info@emergemarketing.net or call 651-842-7075. That's 651-842-7075, or visit them on the web at e-mergemarketing.net. And by the way, that's important. That dash is important. They always are. Some people read these websites, they forget the dashes. So the email is info@e-mergemarketing.net, and the website is e-mergemarketing.net. So, Nikki, what would you say are the 2 or 3 most important issues or problems District 3 faces heading into this election, and why do you feel you're a better choice than Donna Michaels to handle the job?
Well, I think water is a big one.
Yeah.
That's one that the supervisor really can make a big impact in working regionally to make sure that our voices get heard. And so it's something that I worked on while I was mayor. You mentioned that I was on the board of the Verde River Basin Partnership. Right. I have a good technical understanding of water dynamics, both in the Verde Valley and in the broader Yavapai County, how the Big Chino Aquifer impacts our Verde River. I also worked with Friends of the Verde River to develop the water quantity, technical side of their water exchange program, which was really great. So I think there's a lot that can be done in a proactive way to ensure water security. But again, it really takes learning. It takes talking with people and coordinating. So while I was mayor, I was also the member of the Water Advisory Committee, was an intergovernmental group that was facilitated by the county and not only engaged the supervisors and the mayors or, whoever was appointed on council to that committee, but also engaged with legislators and Congress and all of that. So it was a really, we actually made a lot of progress during that time in understanding our water situation. And unfortunately, there wasn't enough impetus to actually make some movement on it. So it disbanded in 2014. That's something I think it's really appropriate to bring back. And I think that it's something that has some support to bring back. Mm-hmm. The county would have to step up and facilitate that. I think I'd advocate for hiring a coordinator to make sure that the best information is provided to the group and, get us talking again about what we can be doing to secure our water future.
Right.
I know that Donna Michaels has, put together a proclamation for water that works with other counties and, talks about a rural management area. But I think the fumble that she had there was not talking to any of the mayors about it. When mm-hmm. when she proclaimed the proclamation, all the mayors sort of looked her way and was like, What are you talking about? We haven't heard about this, So
was this an idea she just came up with like arbitrarily, or did she get some advice to do it as far as you know?
No, and when I ask people, what it does, they don't really know. So mm-hmm. Either way, she hasn't done a very adequate job in communicating, what it was for, what it was about. But I think there was a sentiment, that rural areas are disproportionately unrepresented in the water conversation, mm-hmm. which is true. Yeah. There again, Donna and I have a similar thought or a similar value, but a different way of approaching it.
Yeah, you can tell me whether this really isn't a factor. It just occurred to me as you were talking about the water situation. I know, and I'm not a huge golfer, but I do golf, and I have 3 golf courses within 5 to 10 minutes of where I live in the village. Do you hear about hardcore water proponents get upset about or advocate tamping down on the use of water with golf courses? Is that an issue at all? Or it's not really?
It is, and I think that being responsible with our water resources, you have to really balance high water users.
Right.
I'm a big advocate for agriculture, which is quantitatively a large water user.
Sure.
So there's room for large water users in our, secure water future. But golf is one of those things that's pretty clearly recreational, right. Although there's certainly
it's
an
all over
economic
Arizona. There's a
component.
lot of golf, yeah.
And here's what we can do moving forward is develop reclaimed water sources for, that as a water resource for golf courses. And I think that, is the more responsible way of doing things. At the college, when we established the vineyard, we eventually transitioned it into a reclaimed water source.
Right.
So again, that does get back to the topic of water reclamation. But, what's important for policymakers to fully understand is the legal landscape of regulating water is really tender.
Yeah.
And you have to be sure that you act objectively and not subjectively. Water is a common resource, and it's one that I think is appropriate for government to be involved in managing. But mandating certain things or singling out industries or individuals, you just can't go about it that way. You have to be fair in your approach.
Yeah. What's the second issue top of mind?
Something that I'd really like to see. Here's an important thing that's happening in Yavapai County. We have not updated our zoning ordinance in over 50 years. Since 1968 was the last meaningful revision.
Anything not updated in 50 years doesn't sound like a good thing.
Well,
this radio station hadn't been updated for 50 years, and Chuck and Ryan have been doing that. So
it's a big opportunity for us to get, forward thinking about what we want our unincorporated areas to look like. It's a big deal, and it's a big opportunity. And so I think now that the comprehensive plan is together, the county's considering putting some hours into revising the zoning ordinance, which is the document that's used to enforce. It's the enforcement document. Comprehensive plan is like the guiding principles, but the zoning ordinance is, the letter that is enforced.
So the fact that hasn't been revised in that long, what have been the negative aspects of that?
Well, So unincorporated areas have had mostly default zoning. So places in the village of Oak Creek are zoned the same as they are in Ash Fork. And you can see that there's different visions occurring in those communities. And it would be the benefit to revising this document would be, again, a more objective approach where, each new development that comes up or each new hotel that wants to go in, it would be less about that individual hotel, less about that individual development, and it would give us the ability to say no on occasion without opening up, a bunch of liability. We do have quite a bit of purview to say no to things, but you always have that feeling of like, it's not fair because something else is happening similarly down the road. There's all this precedence. But if you can build a plan that identifies your values and your direction, then it really gives the supervisors the ability to say no when it's appropriate. Right.
So I want to throw an issue out that I know about. It may not be, in the top 3 to even top 5 on your priority list, but it's just something that I know about because it's close to where I am. And that is this controversy that's gone on for at least a couple of years. And Donna Michaels has been a big part of this because of her job, about the Big Park School in the village of Oak Creek and what's going to happen to that and who's going to get space. And, I know the superintendent at the Red Rock High School is very involved in it. It can be a little complicated for people to understand what all of the issues are there. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Let's talk about Big Park School. Okay. Yes, because I think it is a reason why Donna Michaels has garnered some support because she had a very good idea. I think it was...
That's fair of you to say.
It was a really good idea to take an underused building and, suppose that it might go to good use at the county level.
I mean, it's a shame that we had to lose a school because middle class families left the area, so we didn't have enough children to support a school, but be that as it may, continue.
Well, and here's again the devil's in the details about how you approach a situation. I think that Donna Michaels has a tendency to run with an idea if she thinks it's a good idea, and she often puts the cart before the horse. Or the horse before the cart.
I mean, from my reading of how this situation developed, I got the impression that people thought she was being a little heavy-handed about exercising her power regarding this particular issue.
And that just blows up on you. It was an idea that if it had been couched properly and right-sized for the county or, inclusive discussions had with multiple stakeholders, it might have gotten somewhere. But it just didn't take. So she didn't have support, but she kept pursuing it and communicating about it as though she did. And so what it ended up happening was I believe she wasted 2 years of the school district's time. And those were precious years. If the roof's deteriorating, they're thinking they're going to have a solution to their problem, when really they probably would have done better to go explore some other lessee options. Now they're to the point where they're considering selling it to a private entity. They'll have to maybe go to the voters to see what's possible there. But that really would be a shame because, if we can turn the tide and get families living in the VOC again, say that happens in 30 years, and we have to go find a new piece of real estate to build a school. Right. It's much easier to hold on to your real estate holdings.
Yeah.
But I think there's some creative options there, and it just will take the approach of being collaborative and talking to all entities, but I don't see the county moving forward on that, unfortunately.
Yeah, for listeners who don't really know the details of what we're talking about, real quickly, the Big Park School that we're discussing is in the village of Oak Creek, right on Verde Valley School Road, and it was I think did it go up to middle school?
Yeah,
pretty much up to high school.
Yeah. I think it was K through 8, yeah.
Yeah, K through 8, and it'd been there for a long time, and just, there weren't enough families living in the community anymore with children to support it, and now it's been kind of languishing for a while. There is some space being used, but hopefully it'll get ironed out, because that's a huge space that, could be put to good use in this community.
Well, and it's really important to the community. They had a huge fundraising effort to save the school, and I think they raised something like $100,000. And so the community is invested in that space. And I would love, to approach it in a way that the community has some, say and some stake in how that goes, because it's an important spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other issues that you wanted to raise?
I'm not sure if I got to the part about a conservation plan. So this ties
key. Yeah.
That ties in with that zoning ordinance revision. But we have the opportunity to be really strategic and identify areas that we want to keep rural, that we want to keep agricultural, that we want to keep outside of development for many reasons, whether it be wildlife or biodiversity or keeping the Verde River flowing.
Right.
And that really pertains to the Big Chino aquifer and preventing development from that area. And, I'm not anti-development. I think we are going to grow, and we'll have to do it wisely. But there are areas that it's just wise to try to limit growth. And I think that it's always a concern for constituents here who really value their open space, they value their hiking trails, they value their scenic views, and there are economic values that are tied there as well with our property values.
Right.
And so I think that's a really important thing that the county can do. Similar to what Pima County did, they identified areas where they could have some conservation ranches. It's not a plan that would be completely hinged on the county's work, like the county coming up with dollars to purchase land for conservation easements, but could tie into several organizations that are already working on these problems. So.
Yeah, great. So, Nikki, I guess a week or more or so, I got an email from one of your supporters who is raising funds for the possible placement of 2-page spread ads on July 10th, which is coming up this week, in the Red Rock News and the Cottonwood Journal, which would have endorsements from 50 plus prominent Yavapai County citizens, including Mayor Scott Jablow, the Democrats of the Red Rocks, where I'm a member, Yavapai County Treasurer and former District 3 Supervisor Chip Davis, who you mentioned earlier, all the Democratic members of the Sedona City Council, former Sedona Mayor Sandy Moriarty, dozens of area residents, and as they used to say on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, Blimp the Wonder Elephant. How hard was it for a challenger to get that kind of support, both in endorsements and funds for ads like that, when with a presidential election, big Arizona Senate race this year, all the state legislature, you could go on and on. It's a huge election year, to get the attention of voters and what they'll do on political donations when they're so diverted in where they have to send money.
Well, this is a big deal, Stephen. It really is.
Yeah.
It's not like these mayors and vice mayors and council members are just putting their name next to mine because I asked them to. They had to consider it deeply because... And
by the way, it's not just their names. Their pictures are in there, too.
And their words.
Right.
Some quotes, too,
That's right.
which are really touching,
Yeah.
So, but they have something on the line because they have to work with their current supervisor. And so I can't say how impressed I am with, honestly, how easy it was to get those endorsements. And like I said, people were really thoughtful. Some took weeks or months to make that decision. But ultimately, so many people decided to stick their neck out, for me. And I think it's really incredible because I'm not a negative campaigner. You really have to sort of ask me pointed questions, which you've done a good job of doing, to even get me to talk about my opponent. Oftentimes at the end of a meet and greet, people will have to say, and who are you running against? And what has she done differently? And so it's an important piece to encourage people to ask the question, why are all these elected officials choosing to
Absolutely,
support Nikki?
right.
And I hope that will, lead them to learn more about me and see that I am a viable candidate, really ready to go to work for them.
Well, given the fact that I'm a member of the Democrats of the Red Rocks, and I'm kind of politically aligned with all these people that I just mentioned, you can officially throw my name into the list of endorsers.
Right. Thank you, Stephen. I love it.
You're
Thank
absolutely
you.
welcome. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about that I find fascinating about you is your career in the wine industry, which has been pretty extensive and long-standing. So I'll just tell my listeners a little bit about where I'm going with this. Nikki actually studied agriculture at both Yavapai College and Prescott College, which led to a career in the Verde Valley wine industry. She started as a field laborer in 2008, sounds very intense, and moved into a vineyard manager role with Merkin Vineyards. Shortly thereafter, she began teaching vineyard courses at Yavapai College. I would have loved to have taken that course because I know very little about wine. Became the founding director of the Southwest Wine Center at Yavapai College, and helped many people establish vineyards throughout the state through her business, Arizona Vineyard Consulting. What the heck is going on with that?
It was a wonderful 13 years of my life, Stephen. I just loved the time that I spent weed whacking and hand hoeing Bermuda grass and doing all of the really hard work, right alongside doing the planning work and the big vision work. So it's a time I'm so proud of. And I began as a field laborer, and because I'd studied agriculture, I got fast-tracked into management. So I was vineyard manager for Merkin Vineyards, and really quickly after that, they asked me to teach a viticulture class. And you know who was in my very first class at Yavapai College? Randy Garrison, former supervisor.
Wow, that's funny.
So there's a myth out there that Randy's bankrolling me, and he's...
Wait, a conspiracy theory?
There's a conspiracy theory out there that, he's really bent about the last election, and that's why he's supporting me. But
kind of like Kevin McCarthy supporting the guy who's running against Eli Crane.
But no, Randy's a friend. He hasn't contributed financially yet. He was very thoughtful in his endorsement, but we've known each other a long time, and so I'm proud to have that endorsement alongside everybody else's. But anyway, we got started building a vision at Yavapai College that went beyond... it actually really got into the territory of the land-grant universities. So we approached U of A and said, are we going to be stepping on your toes if we put together this awesome 2-year degree program? And they said, no, we had the chance to do that and we're not moving forward on it. More power to you.
Wow.
So we decided to do an industry scale program, which was really unique and quite a big bite to chew off for a small community college. So we've visited several community colleges that had viticulture and enology programs. That's grape growing, viticulture, and enology winemaking. And we decided to step it up a notch because it's so difficult, or I would say maybe so easy to make a mistake in the planning and the planting of a vineyard that can really cost you your success.
Right.
And so we felt secure that it really needed to be an industry scale program in order to produce the successful students and entrepreneurs that we wanted it to. So the Maynard Keenan decided to sponsor the very first acre, which is right next to the current Southwest Wine Center, which used to be a racquetball court. Now, it's a full-scale winery and tasting room. And then the college foundation, the college kind of needed to be convinced. But that first acre convinced them that it was possible. And they kicked in a 20-acre parcel of land that we developed into a beautiful vineyard with a lot of interesting varietals, Spanish varietals, Italian varietals, like things like Malvasia Bianca, which does beautifully here in Arizona. And sure enough, it worked. We've got so many graduates that have gone on to produce their own labels, many of which are here in the Verde Valley.
The growth of the wineries in this area, just in the 3 years that I've been here, it just seems almost exponential. There's a new place every year.
What did I hear? 500% increase in the Arizona wine industry.
I wouldn't even guess that much.
Statewide.
That's incredible.
So I think it's up to like $350 million in economic impact. It's big, and yeah, it's really an honor to have contributed to the success of it at a large scale. But I'm a roughneck too. I think that's an important thing to remember about me. You know, I dress up, I clean up well, but I'm never afraid of hard work.
That's
and
great.
Sometimes I like hard work a little too much, so you have to pull me away.
So what are going to be the wines of choice at the victory party?
Oh, that's a good question. I hate to say it, but I like tequila too.
Are you allowed to mix those?
No, you shouldn't drink them at the same time.
Right.
No, I like I mentioned, Malvasia Bianca is a white wine, originates in Greece, is grown a lot in Italy, and it just has really found a place as a special thing. Here's what I like about wine and the wine industry. Well, there's many things I like about it, but once you have an industry that's really special, you can't export it. This wine industry will never be displaced by a new winery or vineyard in Spain or in Canada or anywhere else. So it's very special and specific to a place. Wine's very expressive of the place. That's why they call it terroir, you know, an expression of the land. And so it's a sustainable industry. The other thing I like is that people can take a moment and enjoy their senses. It's, you know, not often that Americans get a moment to encourage themselves to smell something or sip something, taste something with food, and sort of indulge their senses and learn about the world through that landscape.
So, speaking of celebrations, I understand there's going to be a big birthday party in Jerome tonight.
I got a piñata full of candy.
Is that right?
Anybody can stop in and take a whack at it. In the Jerome Lower Park, which is right next to their community gardens. It's across from the little tourist information shack, so it's easy to spot.
Is that an open party? Anybody
Lots
invited?
Of parking, open invite.
Oh my God!
Come say hi from 5 to 6 tonight if you're listening.
That's incredible. Are you
or 5 to 8?
Are you on a number of drink limit as the candidate, or?
Yeah, I'm drinking water and iced tea tonight. So.
That's great. So we're getting close to the end, and I have a big announcement to make that I need to carve out some time.
Please.
So to wrap this up, what's your message to the voters for July 30th?
Well, I am running this race to really represent the people, represent the constituents, and I hope that if somebody has a question for me, that they reach out. Because I am ready to answer emails or take telephone calls. You can find you can contact us through my website, which is electnikkicheck.com. That's elect, NIKKICHECK.com. Or reach out via telephone is 928-365-6651.
Say the number again.
928-365-6651.
Great. And I know you have a campaign Facebook page, right?
Sure do. Yeah. Instagram, all of that. So feel free to reach out any which way you want. I'm happy to respond to any questions or concerns or, priorities that you think should be on the county docket.
Got it. Well, I wish you the best of luck in the election. I super appreciate you being on the show today. I think it's obvious that you're really articulate and understand the issues. And I wish you the best.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was my pleasure. So that was Nikki Check, everybody. She's running for County Supervisor for District 3. So everybody be ready to vote. The early ballots have started arriving in the mail. I know I got mine yesterday. So be sure that you vote, not only for this election, but for all of the big elections coming up this cycle. And speaking of that, this is my kind of big announcement today. Given that this episode of Sedona Life with Stephen Hanks has been focused on local politics, I thought this would be the perfect time to tell you that starting on July 20th, every Saturday morning from 8 to 9 a.m., I'll be hosting a new politics theme show titled The Patriotic Progressive that will be all about truth, justice, and the democratic way. That kind of sounds like the theme to the Adventures of Superman. I'm not claiming to be Superman, but Truth, justice, and the democratic way is what it's all about right now. Folks, given the existential threat to this country posed by Donald Trump and his radical right-wing enablers who are intent on destroying American democracy, I could no longer simply present an occasional show about local politics on a lifestyle show such as Sedona Life. So while this show isn't going anywhere, my new show will focus solely on the fundamental political, social, and cultural issues of our time with compelling expert guests from Sedona, Arizona, in general, and around the country. So I hope you'll turn into The Patriotic Progressive beginning on July 20th at 8 a.m. only on KAZM Mellow Mountain Radio. And by the way, that first show on July 20th will be a couple of days after the Republican National Convention, which should be one of the scariest clown shows on earth. And I'll have plenty to say about that on my first show for sure, as well as talk about all the other major issues regarding who's going to end up running as the Democratic candidate for president, the draconian Project 2025 that the Republicans are putting forth, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to talking about my political views on KAZM. So I want to thank my main man and producer, Ryan Thompson, and my show sponsor for the entire month of July, Emerge Online Marketing from right here in Sedona. For the past 14 years, Emerge Online Marketing has been providing social media marketing, management training, and advertising services for numerous small to mid-sized businesses across 10 states. They can be your social media marketing department down the hall and keep an eye on your online reviews and reputation as well. By the way, speaking of social media marketing, I'm going to do some. Tell your friends who couldn't hear the show today that they can listen to a podcast version anytime on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify and also now YouTube. You can also find Sedona Life with Stephen Hanks on Facebook and Instagram. And you can email me with comments and questions to stephen@mellowmountainradio.com. And I really encourage you to email me with anything that you have to say about the show. I'll catch you again next Saturday morning at 9 a.m. when my in-studio guests will be award-winning surround sound composer, producer, KAZM for what should be a fascinating conversation about the surround sound music experiences that he regularly presents at the Sedona International Film Festival, Mary D. Fisher Theater. And he actually has one coming up. I believe they're usually on Thursdays. I'm going to check. He has one coming up on July 18th, and that's going to focus on one of Pink Floyd's great albums. Come on, help me out with this, Ryan.
The Wall?
No, what's the other one?
I only know The Wall.
Only know The Wall? I'm drawing a blank.
I know, we're too young.
I'm drawing a blank. Now everybody knows that I was not a huge Pink Floyd fan. But anyway, I've been to one of those surround sound music experiences, and I saw a presentation of Elton John and Hans Zimmer, and it blows you away. So Kaz is going to be on the show talking about this surround sound music experience. Again, I want to thank my guest today, Nikki Check, running for District 3 Yavapai County Supervisor, for coming into the studio today. And thank you all for listening to Red Rock Country's radio magazine. Have a great week, everyone.